it's hard to keep up with everything that's coming out.
Well,
it changes by the time you get it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see who we've got tonight. There's Nadine is with me tonight. All right. A question arose about task 3, and I want to make sure I address it correctly. Task 3 has 2 prompts, and and the first is to assess your schedule. And then the second is to propose a revised schedule. Now, the issue here is you have to assess the existing schedule based on state, federal, state, local, best practice, teacher input. You have to assess what the process that builds your schedule. We're not assessing the schedule itself. We're assessing the schedule that led to the process. I mean, the process that led to the schedule. That's the trick here. And that's where I see some of the work has not addressed those things. How did those stickies get on the board? Somewhere in the counselor's office, the principal's office, the principal's conference room, there's a big gridded board with stickies all over it. How did those stickies get there? And so what we're asking you to do is assess the process for building a master schedule. And then you assess the schedule that you have, and then you build a new one or make recommendations, to the other one to change the process or the schedule itself, but mostly the process. The biggest mistake that school administrators make is having a bad schedule and start changing a bad schedule. It only makes it worse. If you've got a bad schedule, it's because you had a bad process that led to that schedule. And so, you need to look at all your federal programs first. What are the particulars of them, and make sure that I've got that all built into, that the process is look at your federal programs first. The second of your scheduling process is look at the legal requirements for planning instructional time for scheduling from the state. That document that's on the screen right now is also under our week 1 tab on Blackboard in this course is this document right here. I introduced it. This is the next thing. Have you met all of these duties and responsibilities from the state? Have you met all of theirs? All right. And third is your local. Your local has a non-negotiables, that have to be in your schedule, like block scheduling or AD day, or the length of the classes, or paired, like in middle school, pairs of a math science teacher and a language arts. Those are those are local policies in terms of how you organize. How are you going to organize your schedule? That comes next, whether you got an A day, B day, 7-period day, or whether you've got a 4x4 compact. All of those are local decisions, but those are made above the school level. That's the district. That's when I talk about district policy. That's what I'm talking about. So, and then you look at best practices, not like not having 3 lunch shifts in a 90-day block schedule. It works okay for a 7-period day, but 3 lunch shifts means that you go to class for 45 minutes, go to lunch, and then come back theoretically for class for another 45, which never happens. Or reading in the morning. But again, you have to look at your specials. Or do you have them all in the morning where you need for some kids to be with specials in the morning? And then teacher input comes last. And so when we look at the OMA, what it's asking you to do in task 3, candidates are challenged to implement their findings from contextual by assessment, assessing this current schedule in the month that will have to be proposed school administration. All right, prompt 1, develop an analysis of the school schedule to include but not be limited to following. Assessment of the current scheduling procedure, strengths, and areas. That's what I'm talking about. That's where it all starts. Your scheduling procedures, not the schedule itself. Did you go by your federal stuff first? Then did you put your state stuff in? Then did you look at your local non-negotiables? Alignment with any school improvement team findings. I mean, if we're going to stress math this year, don't you think we ought to work that into the schedule that we're teaching more math this year? Alignment with legal requirements. That's that legal document I just showed you for planning and duty-free time, those kinds of things. Alignment with needs of diverse, exceptional population. That's your federal programs. Evidence of input from your faculty. That's number 5. So all of those things go in there, into that analysis in prompt 1. And in prompt 2, that's when you develop your new draft schedule or recommendations to change the existing one. But the first thing you've got to have is you've got to assess, not only before you assess your schedule, you've got to assess the procedures that led to that schedule. Because if you want to change that schedule, you first must change the procedures that led you to that schedule. I know that sounds like semantics, but it is not. Again, the worst mistake you could make in the school business is start trying to change a bad schedule. Change the procedures that led to the bad schedule to get a better schedule, rather than just make a bad one and then start trying to change it, because everybody's got an opinion. And sometimes you get out of compliance with local requirements, state requirements, or federal requirements when you start monkeying with the schedule. And that's what we need for you to understand, that, that local comes third, teacher input comes fifth, federal comes first. So if you will remember that, if you will look at that, and again, I've got the one that'll help you with your state requirements. You know your federal. You might want to ask your principal, is there a scheduling sheet of the local initiatives here at our building? But do they follow that process? What is the process, and do they follow that process in developing the schedule? And then when you make recommendations, you can make recommendations to change the schedule, but there should be a corresponding change to the process. Instead of letting teachers get a hold of it first, let's let them go last, or something like that. Or instead of trying to do all of our local initiatives or our state, let's start with federal. Let's start with those programs where there's no leeway. So again, that's what you do in task 3. Questions about task 3. So we need to see an assessment. These bullets right here, you should have a section in task 3 where you've addressed each one of these bullets right. That's a section heading right there. There should be some text that addresses that, how your school goes about making sure that that's part of their scheduling procedure. That's what you've got to address, is right here in prompt 1. All right. Questions? All right. I had a question about in task 4, which of these you have to do. You folks are in the regular, so y'all are going to be in 5 semesters. So you just pick 12. If you were accelerated, or if you're add-on, you have to do all 21. But since you are regular, just pick any 12 of these for task 4. Pick any 12 of these that you think that you covered in this.
Can I ask a quick question about task 4? When there's a spot in the assignment drop, do we do a peer review for task 4 or not?
No. Don't have to do one.
Okay.
Nope. Don't have to do one.
Okay.
There is a drop box there for that if somebody did one, but it's not required. I think I had that in the, let me look at the schedule. I believe I had that in the schedule. Yep. Task 4. I don't have anything in there about a peer review of task 4, but I do have some people want to do those, and so I put a Dropbox in you. But if you'll refer back to your schedule where we are, we're at week 8. By the end of this week, you should have task 4 about wrapped up by the end of the week. And of course, again, there is nothing about doing a peer review. That's why task 4 should go quickly. You pick any 12 of those one afternoon for a couple hours, write task 4, and you're done. There's no peer review. There's no submit it to anybody. You just write what you did to meet those competencies. Take you a couple hours, and you're done with that. So you should be, once you get through task 3 and reviews, task 4 really and truly is very quick. You just pick any 12 that come to mind and go as fast as you can go. Again, there is no peer review of 4. If you do one, I've had students in the past that wanted somebody else to look at them. Okay, if you did, I'll give you extra credit. You can drop it in the Dropbox. But no, there is no requirement. That's a good question, Nadine. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes. You're breaking up. We can't hear you.
I did, but I was supposed to.
Can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Okay,
Let's see.
I'll write it later. Okay.
You can use the chat function to type me a question, but your audio's not working.
Dr. Lamb.
Yes.
I know we're supposed to do 12. Would it be a problem doing more than 12, or?
I would do all of them. If it were me, I'd do them all. But the requirement is you only have to do 12. But I would write all. If you write them now, you've got them done for next semester.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
While you're in the mode, I mean, there's no time like the present. And I'm the kind of person, once I get started, I'd write all of them because I'd be in that mode. I'd be set down and doing it. I think that would be great if you wrote all of them.
Okay. Yeah, we were discussing last night in our Zoom that, because we still have a lot. I believe we need to have 63 in there by the end. And if we just keep doing 12, 12, and 12, it seems like by the next 2 semesters, we're going to have so many to do.
That's correct. You're just postponing the misery. You're going to have to do, the deal is if you do them on their schedule, you have all 21 to do in the last semester. If you do these now, you can do 12 and 12 the next 2 semesters or 21 next semester and not have any to do that last semester. I prefer punishment up front.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the question I have is, do we the competencies that we actually put in our reflection above the 12, do they all still have to relate to the OMA?
No.
Gotcha. Cool.
No.
Wait, can you repeat that? I didn't get that.
The question was the 12 that you write this semester, do they all have to relate to the OMA? No, they don't.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Dr. Lamb?
I can.
Okay. My question is, last semester, per my clinical coach, she said that I needed to do 12 last semester, but other members in my class said we didn't, but I went ahead and did 12.
Yeah.
So do I need to do 12 again this semester?
You just gotta have all 63. You gotta have 3 rounds done by the time you get through. And so, the plan is 12 first semester, then 9 second semester. This semester 12, 9 next semester, and then you have to do 21 the last semester. But you can do them in the pace you want to do them. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. I hate to rehash an old moment, but when I did 9 last semester for the APTEL, they dinged me for that when I put it on task 3.
Yeah, they do that sometimes. They don't pay attention. That's why I said I'd do all 21.
Gotcha.
That way there's not a problem.
Okay.
No, but
Thank you.
But if you look, I think I've just closed it. Still, let me go back and see if I can open it back up. What it says is it says right here, submit a minimum of 12 add-on licensure, submit all 21. And they don't know sometimes you're not add-on. They thought you were add-on. So they didn't bother to go back and look and see if you were add-on or regular. All right.
Well, it kind of disappointed me, Dr. Larry, because Schamberger was able to rub it in my face.
No, that's not right. Okay. And we covered this one, the legal requirements for planning. Again, if you're not familiar with this document, it's under week 1 tab in Blackboard. This will help you with the state requirements when you're looking at your scheduling process. You have to make sure that all these things are included in your schedule. 185 days or that many hours over 9 calendar months. 10 annual vacation, 10 teacher work days, makeup days, 2 work days, 3 days be user teacher designated work days. You have to have 30 minutes duty-free time each day. Now that can be the 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. It can be that. Planning time. So look at this document. The reference, that's a good thing. So make sure you do that. All right. And let me go back here. All right. Let me go back on the page here. All right. And then we've already looked at the evidence artifact peer review, where we are on that. Here we go. Weekly schedule. All right, we're at week 8. Principal's role in special education services. What I had you to do this week, and a lot of you did, was attend an IEP meeting and then interview the chair or a member of your school's intervention team. And what I wanted, the reasons I wanted you to do this, one, attend an IEP meeting. I know most of you have done that, but the reason why I wanted you to do it specifically is to see the dynamic. See, a lot of folks don't understand the dynamic of that meeting, that the parent isn't equal, that the school actually has, that your EC teacher or your compliance technician, whoever or EC chair, whoever's there representing the EC department, is the facilitator of the meeting, but everybody has an equal say-so in that meeting, and that's what I need for you to understand. I was kind of heartbroken when I was reading one of the responses today, grading some work, and talking about, I think it was Erica was talking about parents don't come and don't get involved. That's sad because they're equal partners. That's what I learned from attending an IEP meeting is that everybody has a role and they're equal partners, and you need to make sure that you facilitate parents. And to that end, I have a document here for you, or I have a website here. I'm sorry. Let me go back to desktop. Here's a website. A lot of folks will actually have a hard copy of the Parents' Rights Handbook that they'll give their parents when they come to an IEP meeting or come to Parents' Night. And there's a website here that has all these things that they can click on. The Parent Information and Resource Center for Parent Information and Resources. And they will actually give this to parents or send this link to them so they can get on here and read about their rights. And that's part of it, is trying to make sure that IEP meeting by federal law involves the parents and treats them as equal partners, and that's very important. And that's one of the reasons why I want you to go to the IEP meeting. I want you to see how, yes, the school staff facilitates the meeting, but the principal doesn't get to be in charge, or the LEA representative. It's a collective. It's a group that has to come to a consensus. And you need, and the more you can inform parents, and the more they know their rights, and the more they know about the program offerings, the better advocate they can be, but the better team member they can be for you. For some reason, administrators have this notion that if we give parents all this information, they'll use it against us. That's possible, but I prefer to think that they'll use it for good of their own children if you make them equal partners in the process, that they know everything that's going on. And so I've got a PowerPoint, and the reason why I have this PowerPoint tonight is you may have to sit down and explain your program or what you're doing with your parents. I mean, I've got this PowerPoint. Now, for the purposes of this PowerPoint, mainstreaming is the old method of having kids pulled out that are only with the EC teacher, but versus inclusion. And you may have to explain this. This would be a good way to explain to parents. We're now doing an inclusion model. This is what your child will get. You might have to put something together that shows all of these. And there's some research behind things in here, but you may have to do something like this to assist your parents. Now, you as school staff should know this, and obviously your EC staff knows these things, but parents don't. They don't know what your program consists of or the program offering. I've got this one. This is like for learning disabled children. For the parents of learning disabled children who want to know why my child's not being pulled out anymore, well, we're providing inclusion services. Or why is my child, still self-contained when other schools are allowing my children to go to class and teachers come into that classroom and serving them in the classroom. You need to explain the point of this PowerPoint is educational, I hope, for you, but it's also that you should do something like this for your parents for each of your programs to explain why you're doing what you're doing, or so they'll know what their child is supposed to receive. So that's start with the parent handbook, with the website, put something together about this is the services we offer at this school. If you will involve your parents, if you will let them know what the law and the policies of your district are and state law, if you will involve them in that, they will be much better partners in the long term. I hate that we have some that don't want to be involved at all, but for whatever reason, we see involved parents as the problem. I see uninvolved parents as our problem, and we should work very hard to involve them. And it's not a bad thing to have parents that are knowledgeable and involved. And it's your responsibility to help them become knowledgeable and involved, because they are equal partners in that IEP meeting and that IEP determination. That's what I wanted you to learn from that this week. Now, the second thing that I wanted you to do is talk to your intervention specialist. What is MTSS? What is the some schools are going past 90 days now and going to 180, but what is an intervention process? And so I do have, let me close this one out. Okay, share screen. I do have one. This is from Cumberland County. I have one here that basically explains an intervention system using RTI. Yours may not look exactly like this, but this is the kinds of things that you should be asking, or you should be finding out from your intervention team at your school is how does our tier system work? How long does it last? Do we do the 90 days? Do we do an extended 120, 150, 180 days? What do we do? The traditional is 30 days of anecdotals, 30 days of the first intervention, an assessment, and either more of that same intervention or a new intervention for 30 more days before a testing decision is made. But some school districts are going beyond that 90 now. You need to know what yours is doing. Because, and this is very important, if you don't hear anything else tonight, hear this part. Your school intervention team, while it may have an EC person on it, they are not the person responsible. A school intervention team is what the state of North Carolina refers to as an SBC, or a school-based committee. Legally, the governance of that committee is the school principal. If that goes wrong, you go home. It's not somebody else's responsibility if kids got tested, before the interventions were done. It's not the EC person's or the psychologist's responsibility that kids didn't get tested at all or got tested too soon, or that's EC. Intervention team, you are the responsible party as the school administrator at your building. So you better know what's going on with your intervention team. Are we hitting our deadlines? Are we hitting our marks? Are we doing our 30 days of anecdotals? Did we assess after the first 30 days of intervention? Those things, that's your responsibility as a school administrator, not your compliance technician in the EC department or your EC department chair. They may be a member of this team, but they are not the people responsible. That would be school administration. So you better know how it works. And that's why this student wrote me this nice little, this is how it works at their school. That's wonderful. And you need to know that at your school, because when you get your job, you're going to be the responsible party. So that's why I have that one on intervention in there this week. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to close some of these things. Okay, let me close that one. We've already gone over the weekly schedule. We can close that. And again, that's what I was asking you to do. You should write up something for yourself like that one I just showed you, what your process is. What is your tier system at your school? All right. We'll close this one and go to FERPA. That's the one I'm looking for. Now, back to our business. We're about law and finance, more law. FERPA. If you don't know what FERPA is, I have the link for you there. It's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This is a big deal. When you're handling all this information about students, whether they're EC or not, mostly we get involved with this with EC kids, but it really extends to all the children in our building. We need to make sure that we follow all of these guidelines in terms of access to their records, disclosure of records, privacy information, all these things. You need to read this document on FERPA about handling information. Those of you who are involved, like Chris, I know is involved with testing. He has a lot of rules that go along with privacy on testing as well. Those all are spawned by FERPA. FERPA is the parent of all of these privacy and confidentiality laws. They all go back to FERPA. So if you want to know the granddaddy of all the laws about privacy and student records, it's FERPA. Go back to it. You need to read it. It has several sections. So that's where all these things come from. And so U.S. Department of Education, FERPA general guidance for students. So make sure that you review that. All right. The last, I think that's it for me tonight, other than my last document. Monitoring our time here. All right. I had a former student who was a EC compliance director for a large district in the state. And we talked about, I always like lists. This is instead of Dale's top 10, this is Jen's 10. The things that you need to be aware of as a school administrator. 10 million children today in the USA live with a special need. And that was 11 years ago. That number is more than 10 million now. It's not something that's going to go away. Now, I have a pet peeve, and this is just a personal editorial. And I don't want to get too sidetracked on it, but I think part of what we're doing with extending the MTSS process and the multi-tiered system of support, one of the reasons why we're stretching it out past 90 days is to slow down the identification of special needs students, because we don't have the money or the resources, and that worries me. Again, that's just my personal opinion. If we're using that for good, where we're giving a child every chance in the world to respond to intervention, that's wonderful. But if we're only using it as a delaying tactic, there's another crop coming next year. It's not going to get any better. I mean, the idea of delaying is we don't have room for them right now. We'll delay. Well, there's just as many coming next year as there are this year. That eventually just stacks them up, and you get into problems. You need to deal. I'm a deal with my problems now kind of fella, and so I hope that we aren't extending the tier system of support simply to delay identifying kids for EC, for exceptional children's services, because there won't be less needing services next year. That's not been our history for the last 20 years. Each year there's as many or more. And so just delaying it or putting it off is not the solution. Now, if you're doing that to give a child every opportunity to respond to intervention, that's a good thing. But the idea here is kids with special needs coming to public school is not going to go away, and the numbers are not going to drop. That's just, you deal with them now. Don't delay. Don't try to obfuscate, or don't try to redirect their parents to something else. Nope. It's, deal with your problem and deal with it and move on, is my point here. Everybody knows PL 94-142, which is the Education of Handicapped Children Act from 1975. That's PL Public Law 94-142. I don't have that on the screen, but that's what it is. You've all heard of that. That's Exceptional Children's Act. If you haven't read it, you ought to Google it and read it in terms of what children are supposed to get. A lot of school people don't understand least restrictive environment. That's one of those things that you need to study on from PL 94-142 and the accompanying documentation. That's one of the things that I would point you to get a good understanding of as a school administrator, is least restrictive environment, because that's going to come up a lot. What parents think that means sometimes is whatever the least you have. What it actually means is the least you have that's appropriate for their child. That's where the conflict arises. They think that every kid's supposed to start in the least restrictive environment that you offer. No, they're supposed to start in the least restrictive environment that is appropriate for their child. That's a big difference. It sounds like semantics, but boy, I've been in more than one argument over that one. There's a big difference in how parents interpret least restrictive environment and how the IEP team interprets that. It's the least restrictive environment that's appropriate for their child, not that you offer as a school or a school district. That's very important. Sounds like semantics, but you need to read that very carefully so that you'll be armed when you go to those meetings and you'll know what you're talking about. So least restrictive environment, you should bone up on that one. Civil rights of special needs kids, again, really what you need to do there is what I had on the screen before. You need to bone up on the Parents' Rights Handbook so you'll know what their civil rights are. Be always, when you're going in, know what the other side knows. And so you hope that it's not an adversarial relationship when you go to an IEP meeting with parents, but sometimes it is. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So you should know what they expect to be given. 1997, we had an addendum. The law was amended to include IDA individuals with disabilities. That's physical and mental disabilities. That generally the mental comes into the 504 plan. You need to understand what a 504 plan. IDA is free and appropriate education. Evaluations only take place to the extent it helps with student placement. IEPs are developed for each ECC students, and students and parents to take an active role in the process. But you need to look at IDEA, especially for your 504 kids, and that gets into ADD versus ADHD and those kinds of things. Your district has policies on there. There's laws. ADD, attention deficit disorder, is a diagnosis from a psychologist and does not automatically qualify you for a 504 accommodation plan or doesn't qualify a student for a 504 accommodation plan. ADHD is a medical doctor, MD diagnosis. That does require a 504 plan. You need to know things like that. Dr. So-and-so has diagnosed my child. Well, what kind of doctor are they? Now, if they're a shade tree doctor like me, that doesn't matter. They're a simple PhD. Now, if they're an MD, yeah, we got to write a plan. If the MD says you've got ADHD, that's a medical diagnosis. ADD is an attention deficit disorder, is a social diagnosis from a psychologist. Does not require a 504 plan. Those are the kinds of things that you will learn when you read IDEA. So you should Google and read IDEA, Americans with Disability Act. You should Google and read those. I'm not trying to give you a whole lot of homework to do on this stuff, but before you get your job, you better bone up on all these things for exceptional children in these federal programs, because missteps in these carry more penalty than missteps in regular programs, is what I've tried to explain to you. You get this wrong and things go bad for you. Again, read 390 PL, NC, North Carolina General Statute, NCGS 390, 391. You need to take a glance at those. Let me quickly look and see if I can get to that. I know my screen sharing is paused. I'll be right back. NCGS 390. Oh, come on now. 115C dash. 115, there we go. C dash 390, 390. I'll be right with with you. I'm dialing it up. I thought I had it up, but this one won't stay up. Okay, and what I want you to look at there is how that you have to handle discipline with exceptional children is what I want you to look at. And so that's 390, 391 according to but you need to look at those in terms of your rights when dealing with, I'll get out of that and go back to this one. All right. But how you deal with exceptional children, you need to look at state law for exceptional children. You need to look at disciplining exceptional children. Like if you have a kid who brings a gun to school and you do a 10-day suspension and request an hearing for long-term suspension or expulsion or exclusion, long-term suspension or exclusion or placement in an alternative school, that you have to do the EC, you have to do a manifestation determination, determine if that's part of their disability. You have to do a functional behavior assessment. You have to do psychological. You have to do all those things. Your district has a policy on that, but state law addresses all that. So it gets, we've talked about discipline tonight. We're talking about EC. You put the two of them together, it gets really woolly then. Mm-hmm. You start talking about disciplining exceptional children. Your district has a policy and a process. One of the things that I always remind students of, in-school suspension, you've heard administrators say, and probably not very good ones, well, I've got 10 days to work with here. I can suspend a kid up to 10 days before I have to do a manifestation determination, call an IEP team meeting, do all that paperwork. I've got 10 days. They can be suspended up to 10 days before I have to do any of that paperwork. No, that's not exactly true. There's a couple of caveats. Number one, in-school suspension and bus suspension count against that 10 days. Write that down. It's in and out or bus suspension count against your 10 days. But here's the caveat. This notion, well, this kid's a fighter. I don't want to have to, so I'll just give him 1 day suspension so he can fight 10 times before I have to do all that paperwork. Manifestation, determination, functional behavior assessment, psychological, put all that stuff together. I can suspend him 1 day at a time. No. On the third time, look at the screen. On the third time that kid fights, that's now a pattern. He goes to the head of the line. You have to do all the paperwork on him. You have to put him through the process. Because he's shown a pattern of behavior. And so where some schools get in trouble is the kid is exhibiting a pattern of behavior, but they're manipulating the suspension so that they don't have to do the manifestation determination, functional behavior assessment, and psychological. They don't have to revisit his IEP or put behavior goals in. So that is circumventing the law is what I am telling you. But that's where folks get caught with EC kids and disciplining EC kids, is that they think that it's 10 days out of school and that I can do them one at a time. That way I can avoid all this paperwork and conflict and not know. Third time kid does the same thing. Doesn't matter that you've only suspended him 2 days prior to that. He goes to the head of the line. You have to put him through the process before you can do another suspension or take any more disciplinary action against him. You got to put him through the process to see if it's just part of his behavior or if we need to put behavior goals in his IEP. You got to go through the process. And the process that I'm talking about is the manifestation determination, determine if this is part of their disability, a functional behavior assessment, and a psychological reevaluation. That's what you have to do with an EC kid before you can ask for a long-term suspension or exclusion, a placement in an alternative school, before you can suspend them a third time during a school year, regardless of the number of days. That's what you have to do. You need to know, you need to understand that. You need to make sure that you understand what your district's policy are on disciplining exceptional children. Exceptional children can be disciplined like any other child, except when it's a manifestation of their disability. Can't do that to them. So you need to know all the laws and the rules on exceptional children. It would take me days to go through all this stuff. I just need for you to know that it's out there. And I'll leave you with this thought tonight before I go to questions. I told you that we had a collaborative partners meeting here on campus not long ago. One of the things that the superintendent said to me clearly, as the person who's in charge of clinical experiences here, is can you teach these folks during their internship to ask questions, look it up before they act? Don't think that it's this notion of I'll ask for forgiveness later rather than permission up front. That's not how the law works. Remind them, especially when they're working with exceptional children, that there is no asking for forgiveness later. You need to ask permission up front. You need to know the process. And before you go off and start doing things with exceptional children, especially, or children that are in federal programs, you need to ask somebody first. If you don't know or don't know what the process is for dealing with them, you better ask somebody. There's no recourse on a lot of this federal stuff, or kids that are in federal programs. Exceptional children is federal. English is second language is federal program. Title I is federal. CTE is federal. Academically gifted. All the things that I had you review as a part of your OMA, those are all federal programs. You can't get those wrong. The feds don't have any sense of humor about getting things wrong or giving out private information. That's why we went over FERPA tonight. Or not following the intervention team process. Those kids have the same protections under the law as if they're already in exceptional children. Let me say that again. That's my last thought for you tonight before I go. Once a kid's been referred to the intervention team, they get the same protections as if they are already in the EC program. The federal government extends their arm or their wing of protection over them once they come. So you have to treat them as if they're already in the program. Too many schools make that mistake of saying, well, he's not been identified yet. I can do this, that, and nope. Once they've been referred, same thing applies in terms of you can't suspend them more than 10 days. And you can't suspend them more than 3 times in a row for doing the same thing. Those same laws apply to intervention referrals as if they're already in the exceptional children's program. Need to remember that. Questions you have for me tonight? I know this EC stuff is really difficult. There's a lot of facets to it. I've just tried to introduce you to all the different pieces and parts. You need to do some work on your own to learn more about it in your district, how it works, what the policies are, how it's implemented, how it's interpreted in your district, what the policy is in your school, how you do this and that and the other, how your district handles these things, discipline. Some districts don't allow suspension of exceptional children at all. Some, do the manifestation determination. They do the EC packet, as it's called. Some go that route. Some don't put them in their alternative schools. Some districts have exceptional children's teachers at their alternative schools. Some don't. You need to find out what your district does so that you can stay within the law. So that wraps up my night of EC. If you've got more questions on the OMA, call or email me. We can Zoom and I can work through, send me your work. I hope that I've been more helpful tonight on the OMA, looking at that scheduling process of how that schedule has been developed, because all these things factor into it that we've talked about tonight. All right, questions you have for me? All right. I'll see y'all next week. We had about 15 joined us tonight. That's a pretty good group. Try to wrap up your OMA task force. Remember, you don't have to have it peer reviewed. Just wrap it up and get it ready to roll. You can send them to me, and I'll read them and get them back to you. Or you can send them to your coach. That works just as well. All right. I'll see you next week.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.